I have my strawberries in hand for an immersive experience, so I hope that you too have your strawberries in hand. A little bit of background about local immigration partnerships. Our aim is to strengthen the role of local communities across Lanark and Renfrew County in integrating and serving our newcomer population. Local immigration partnerships are funded by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, a department of the Government of Canada, and support communities in bringing together service providers, settlement agencies, community groups, employers, and other key municipal organizations to create a welcoming and inclusive community for newcomers. The medicine of the strawberry is reconciliation. Today's focus is important as Canada slowly moves towards reconciliation with its Indigenous communities. Many are asking, what role should newcomers be playing in this process? For many, the road to reconciliation starts with education. This is a country of immigrants, with the exception of the First Nations people. We all came here from somewhere, and local immigration partnerships believes that it's our duty to help facilitate knowledge sharing opportunities like today's event. Today's event is in support of the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action for Newcomers, number 93 and 94. And as a note of progress, the Canadian Oath of Citizenship has been amended to support the Truth and Reconciliation 94th Call to Action as of yesterday, June 23rd. Before we welcome our speaker today to take us further into this conversation, I want to acknowledge that local immigration partnership of Lanark and Renfrew County is situated on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people. Local immigration partnership is working towards reconciliation, and this acknowledgement is just a small reminder of that larger commitment. With this in mind, we respectfully thank these Indigenous peoples for hosting us on their ancestral lands. Miigwech, thank you. With those thoughts shared and a willingness to learn, let me properly introduce today's speaker. Aimee Bailey is the elder in residence at the Pembroke campus of Algonquin College and is a founding member of the Circle of Turtle Lodge. The Circle has been reviving, promoting, and restoring traditional Anishinaabe culture in the Ottawa Valley since 1999. Their membership include individuals from many different Indigenous nations from across Canada, regardless of status. Welcome, Aimee.
Miigwech, Jody. Thank you very much for organizing all of this and getting us going with our teaching for this month. So I'll introduce myself in the traditional way. Bonjour, Joshko Benezikwe Indigenakos, Nume Indoden, Mamawi Chinakawan Indujaban, Madewian Mamawi Anishinaabe Kwendel. So I've introduced myself by my spirit name and my clan so that the elders will recognize me as I speak. That's one of the things that we usually do. So in our way of, in our traditional ways, each of the, we're very conscious of the astronomy. So we're conscious of the sun and its placements through the years. So we're aware of the spring equinox and the summer solstice that's just happened. And so we're also aware of each of the moons as it fulfills its cycle every month. We know that our cycle is about 28 days. There's fractions maybe scientifically of that, but roughly about every 28 days is a moon cycle. So we're aware of when the moon is new and when the moon is full, like today, and we take note of those things. And each of the moon cycles has different teachings in it, and we honor each of those ones as it comes along. What we've been doing at the college with Jody and some of the other work that we've done is have a First Moon, First Peoples historic Indigenous History Month, and that's been a very good thing, but been very well received. And this is So we also want to do that with our strawberry moon teaching. So this one, the strawberry moon, is the moon cycle that happens around the summer solstice. So the moon was new a couple of weeks ago, and it's full today. And it's named the strawberry moon because, of course, in this area, it is when the strawberries bear fruit. So these are some. I have kind of wild strawberries, so mine are a little bit smaller than Jody's, or some of the ones that you get from the nurseries and places like that. But these are the fruit that is born at this point in time through the calendar year. And with this teaching, we're taught a lot about, because it's a strawberry, the strawberry in our culture is known as it's often called a heartberry, and it's always connected to the drum. The drum is the heartbeat of Mother Earth, and so we're very connected to Mother Earth when we're thinking about the strawberry. So the strawberry is shaped. I'll try and get my biggest one here. The strawberry is kind of shaped like a heart, if you can see that. So all of you, so that kind of way, it's shaped like a heart. And so we think about the kinds of things that we feel at this time. It's not so much about love in this way. That's the raspberry. That's next month. But this one is it's about having a good feeling from your heart. So that's what connects it to reconciliation. There's a couple of different stories about strawberries, but I'm going to relate the one that I heard the first, and it was about a couple of brothers who, they grew up together, and they would have their misunderstandings and things like that as time went on, but they always managed to get over them, until this one time that something happened, and they just could not. They just decided that they were too mad at each other, and they were never going to speak to each other again. So that was fine. They went on that way for a little while, but then one of them died, and the brother, the survivor who was left, he was totally shaken by his loss. He couldn't. So when he went to the grave of his brother, he couldn't help himself. He just was crying endlessly on his brother's grave because he missed him. He was sad that they hadn't made up before he died, and forever there would be this big chasm between them, and they'd never get back together again. So as he was crying on over the grave, his tears, they all fell on top of the earth on top of his brother's grave. And Creator saw that happen, and so from those tears, the strawberry plants grew, and then it grew and grew, and it produced fruit there while the brother was still there crying. And so that fruit helped them to be able to know that his brother had forgiven him, and so he could have peace in his heart. So that's the kind of reconciliation that we kind of aim for with the strawberry teaching and sharing it with the non-Indigenous people. Many of our moon ceremony are just for Indigenous people, and so we don't always share all the teachings. But with this one in particular, because of the movement now towards reconciliation and the idea of working together in the future, we wanted to share that and invite all of you to come and see that. So for us, there's other teachings as well about another story that I'd heard about the strawberry teaching was that it was a couple who had a big fight, and the woman decided that was it. She was leaving, and she'd had enough of this, so she was just going away. So she was really angry, so she was walking really fast. So the husband finally realized that he what a mistake he'd made. So he started praying to Creator to help, to allow him to catch up to her so he could apologize. But she was going really fast, so he wasn't making any headway on this. So he kept praying and praying as he followed her. And so Creator had the wife go into a field of blueberries. And so she noticed the blueberries, and if you've been picking blueberries, you know that they're kind of easy to pick. You know, they come off the bush really easily. So she picked a few blueberries, but it didn't stop her from going. She was still mad, and she was going to go along. So so the husband kept praying, and so Creator allowed her to go into a field of raspberries. So the raspberries grow up pretty high, and so but they still come off really easily. So she got some raspberries, but it didn't stop her. So she kept going, and so finally Creator had her go into a field of strawberries. Now, to pick strawberries, you really have to kind of sit down on the ground because they grow really low. So she decided that she would sit down, and of course they were very nice and sweet. So she sat down and she ate some strawberries, and while she was sitting there, the husband was able to finally catch up to her and apologize, and so they made up their differences and they were reconciled once again. So those are a couple of stories that are about the strawberry. There's also some other strawberries or other teachings about the strawberry that are kind of mostly for women, but I'll share them anyway. And if you have especially if you have bigger strawberries, you'll be able to see this a little bit better. But if you bite it in half and look at it like that, it kind of looks like a uterus. So it has to do with all the reproduction parts of the female. And so this is medicine that we can take when we're in our moon cycle. So especially the leaves and the green parts on the strawberries are parts that you can have to help as a medicine for menstrual cramps and things like that. So I appreciate that. I wanted to share with you also. I wanted to share with you some artwork that I have. This is a cool calendar that I got many years ago, but it has some artwork about the strawberry moon and the grandmother that's there. And the way that we call the grandmother moon is that the stories of the strawberry ended up being the moon. So it's a very interesting calendar that I've had since 1998, and I just keep using it every year because it's got such good stuff in it. One of the things about the berry fast and the women's teachings is that for our young women, you might have, for the young men, they go on fasts often, but what Hollywood calls them is like a vision quest kind of thing. So when they're adolescent coming of age, then they do a vision quest. But for our young women, as they have their first moon time, they would do something that's called a berry fast, and that's part of why I showed you the ovary parts of the berry, because for us it's a time for our girls to transition into womanhood and to learn about all of those all of the teachings that they would need to know to be able to run a household and to be able to look after kids and to be able to look after themselves, so that they can choose when to have children, those kinds of teachings. So it's might be compared to maybe sex education these days in school, but it's a little bit more than that. It's more about planning their lives in the future and keeping themselves safe, that sort of thing, but very fast, yes. So what they would do in this berry fast, it would be that when they get their first moon time, they let their mom know and their aunties know, and then they would stop eating, they'd not be able to eat berries for a whole year. And in their old way of living, berries were the only sweetness that there was. Well, maybe there was honey, that would count. But mostly it was berries. So berries were used to sweeten food, such as dried meats and things like that. And I like it in wild rice. Berries. But anyway, yeah. So young girls would have to fast for a whole year from eating berries, from that sweetness. During that time, their aunties and grandmothers would come to visit them and give them different teachings about becoming, about the next stage of their lives and the kind of teachings that they'd need to learn about in that time. I've had the opportunity to be with a few young women as they come out of their berry fast, and it's been a wonderful experience to have. One of them was she was accompanied by her brothers at this point in time, and they were talking about how impressed they were with now this little, little girl who used to be all elbows and knees was now a young woman, and they promised, they pledged themselves to protect her, so protect her from all harm as she grew into being an adult. So I thought that was pretty impressive. That was maybe something that they had learned on their vision quest as part of their duties as becoming a man, that they would protect the women in their family. That was really neat. So at this coming out event, often they would, before they came out, they would have something like a cedar bath. It's another medicine thing that we would do. So it would be making they would be making boiling cedar for a long time. And so about a gallon of water and a bunch of cedar, and then adding that water into a bathtub of warm water so that it would release all of any of the trauma that had been in the movement from childhood to womanhood. So that would be something that could be done. So they have that, and then they come in, they put on their fancy regalia that they've spent most of their year working on with the help of their aunties and grandmothers and sisters and moms. So they would work on that, and then they would be introduced to the community as a young woman now, and then the young woman would have gifts that she'd worked on all year to give to different people who had been influential in her lifetime. So in her transition, I guess, from childhood to womanhood. Those are some of the things that are pretty interesting in our culture. There are So part of the other medicine of the strawberry is it's a kind of a tonic, I guess. So you could make a tea from the leaves of the strawberry. Tonic. Some people would say that could purify your blood, whatever that means exactly. But it's it would be a good tonic, and it would certainly work on your liver and stuff like that. So it's good that we can have this moon time to reflect on all of those things. So, and with our moon cycles, we'd also have something. This is mostly just for women because the moon is connected with water. Of course, it controls the tides and things like that. So a lot of the moon stuff is women's teachings. So and we have a ceremony that's called a full moon ceremony, and it would be done by a gathering of women that would go out on, like tonight. You have to be able to see the moon. So if it's cloudy, and I think it's going to be clouding up tonight and raining tomorrow, but if you can, when you can see the full moon, then you can go and have a moon ceremony. And one of the things that we do at that is that we make tobacco ties as an offering, and we use, in this case, we use yellow cloth, yellow as a reflection of Grandmother Moon. We always use 100% cotton cloth because we usually put tobacco ties into a fire, so we don't want to use anything that's synthetic. That's not good for the environment. So we would use 100% cotton yellow cloth, and we get a meter about this, and that meter of cloth, you'd make a tobacco tie in one end, and the meter of cloth is to represent the whole span of womanhood. So from being a girl child, a girl, infant, child, to this young adolescent woman who's just become a woman, to a woman who's had children already, and then to the grandmothers, to the elder women. So that whole span of the yellow cloth represents the whole span of Grandmother Moon's life, I guess we could put it like that. And that's is what we're honoring the Grandmother Moon with that tobacco offering. So that's something that puts it into perspective for us, because any women could do this at any time in their lives. It's the only ceremony that women can go to when they're on their moon time. Sometimes usually with ceremonies, if you're on your moon time, you should not go. You should stay away and enjoy your moon time on your own. But this one, everybody can go. All women can go at any time of their moon time. We always use sage there too, and that's a medicine that we can all use on our moon time. So with that, I think I've got all of the things I wanted to go over. So maybe Jody, we could start with our talking circle, unless you want to do some questions and answers, a question period first.
Yeah, I think that we can open it up to some questions and answers. Okay. If you have any specific questions for Elder Aimee Bailey, you can raise your hand. There should be a button at the bottom of your screen that has a little hand figure that says raise hand. So if you raise your hand, I will allow you to verbalize your question to Aimee so that we can get those questions answered before we head into the talking circle portion of our event.
Hi, Aimee. Thank you so much for this today. Day of all days, I think I needed to have some time with you, so I'm glad that I did. This is just a little personal question. What's your favorite strawberry dish? How do you like to enjoy strawberries best?
Oh, that's a good question. Besides, like on cheesecake, I like them like I just like eating them by themselves mostly. But some people do. Often at our gatherings, there's something made called strawberry juice that people make, and that's really nice, especially in the summer when there's lots of strawberries. All these roadside places have strawberries for sale. You can have you can make strawberry juice by using a big jug, say at least a 2-liter jug, and squashing the strawberries in the bottom and letting them float around in the juice and having it nice and cold. And on a very hot day, that would be something that would be so refreshing. Could maybe put a little honey in it if you wanted, or maple syrup or something. But usually the strawberries are juicy enough that you can just do that, and it's great. Some people, like a lot of people, make jam and stuff like that, and that's okay if you can't get the fresh ones. But enjoy them while they're in season, and you'll notice the sweetness that are in them. It's wonderful.
Thank you. And I was always someone who was super excited when strawberry season came around because it was so short. I went to school to university in California, and it was maybe February. I came into the dining hall and there were strawberries, and I said, "Oh, is it your strawberry season now?" And they all looked at me like I was crazy, because there was really only a couple of months out of the year that they didn't have strawberries.
Right, right. So it's interesting that in different geographic areas, our moons are called different things, because there are some places where the strawberries don't grow at all.
Yeah.
You know, so in California, there might be a different name for their moon, because it would be, if they always have strawberries, then they would have something else that would be fruiting in June.
Yeah. You good?
So we have a question from Victoria.
Yeah, I just joined a couple minutes late. I was just wondering, did you mention which Indigenous group or groups practice these strawberry practices, or should we assume it's kind of universal? I don't want to assume that, but I just missed that part there.
Okay, the teachings that I have are Anishinaabe teachings. So these would be sometimes our area used to be called the Eastern Woodlands people, like that kind of area. So the Great Lakes regions to St. Lawrence, probably, but even into the Maritimes. So this is an area now that we have, if you think about the kind of the line on the map, where if strawberries are fruiting in June here, they might continue all across to the Maritimes, but when you're going west, going a bit north into Manitoba and stuff, they might not be fruiting there yet. It's not warm enough for them. But so different areas will have different names for their moons. But this is so the Anishinaabe people. These are the names that we have for them. Thanks.
So we do have one question in the question and answer, the Q&A area of the webinar. Will you do one next month for the raspberry moon? Will you do a celebration?
Well, I could. That one, we'll have to arrange with Jody for that. Yeah.
That's a good question. And one more question in the Q&A as well before we head over to the rest of our attendees. Couple questions about offering tobacco. What kind of tobacco do you use? Where can you buy the tobacco? And is there a special way to give the tobacco?
Okay, those are good questions. We like to use traditional tobacco, and I've been growing my own for a long time. The first tobacco seeds I got were from Elijah Harper, and I don't know if younger people might not know who he is, but he was an MP in Manitoba, northern Manitoba. I think he was from way up north, anyway, Manitoba, and he was famous for showing his eagle feather in the House of Commons. It was at the Meech Lake time, and he was the one who said no all the time. Credit is given to somebody from Newfoundland about that, but making the Meech Lake thing stop. But Elijah really did it. So so he gave me some tobacco seeds, or traditional tobacco seeds, and I've been growing them, and I've gotten seeds from, and so I've kept seeds every year and kept going on with them. So I grow my own tobacco, and I have for years, and I've shared those seeds with anybody who wants them. I'll share. I've got millions of seeds. So Jody's growing some, and everybody else, So so we like to use that kind, but in a pinch, any kind of tobacco will do. So I've had elders tell me that, well, even bum a cigarette from somebody and that's tobacco in it, that can do too, So there's lots of places, especially on First Nations now, that sell cigarette tobacco in big packages. So that could work. But I have, one of our members has a store in Almont, or an online store based in Almont, and it's called Turtle Lodge Trading Post. And she has traditional tobacco that you could buy there. And she's finally been able to get the authorization to send it through the mail, because that was apparently a big deal that you couldn't send tobacco products through the mail. So she used to have to send it by Purelator, but now she can send it through the mail, so you can order traditional tobacco, and the package is like huge, giant, so you'd have enough for like 5 years or something. But yeah, that was I did get some of that kind too at one time. So that's two ways to do it. And then when we make a tobacco tie, we always use a little square of cotton, and you can put some tobacco in there and then fold up the corners and tie it shut. I don't have one in front of me to show you, but it looks like a little pouch a little pouch with some leaves on top kind of thing. So that can be a tobacco tie, but you don't need to make a tobacco tie. You can just put some tobacco in your hand, and we always use our left hand. And it's curious because anybody that does their blood pressure, you'll notice that they use their left hand. Sorry, my other right hand is my left hand. So when they do their blood pressure, they always do it on the left, right? So because that's the one that's closest to your heart. So put your tobacco in your left hand, and then put your prayers in it, and then you can put that tobacco. If you happen to have a fire, some people have wood stoves or campfires or something like that. If you happen to have a fire, you can put that tobacco in the fire, and then that will vaporize it, and your prayers will go to Creator. You can put it. You can just put it down on the ground. That's what I often do when I'm supposed to put out tobacco whenever I hear thunder. So I go and put it at the base of the tree, and that's good. It'll get into the ground like that and be released. You can put it. An Algonquin favorite, because we always lived near the water. We would put it on running water, and then that water will take away the tobacco downstream into the ocean, into Creator. So you can do it any of those ways, and that will get your prayers in that tobacco to Creator. And the medicine of tobacco is clarity. So when you're making your prayers, usually you're asking for something. Something that you need, usually, not something that you want, like winning the $70 million lottery, but something that you really, really need, help with. So if you need help with, help the relatives of all the people who's related to the bodies that were found in the different residential schools, if you're praying about that for help for them, like that would be a good prayer to put down. Let go. That's like that kind of thing. So does that answer all those questions, Jody?
I think so. We just have one kind of adjacent question that's on the same topic from Tasha from the chat that just says, do you empty it from the bottom pouch or leave it in the pouch? Or sorry, empty from the bottom pouch, or do you leave it in the pouch when you gift it?
Oh, if you're giving it to someone, if you're giving a tobacco tie to someone, you just give the whole tie. But if you're just praying for praying yourself, you don't need the fabric at all. You can just use the tobacco. So lots of times when we do a tobacco ceremony, we'll pass out tobacco and people will have it in their hands. And then when we go to collect it up, everybody's hands have been all sweaty and stuff, so it's really hard to get it off. So you just brush it all off onto the ground, and you'll be good. You got it.
We're going to go to Ahmed next with his question. He's had his hand patiently raised. So Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Elder Aimee, for gracing me with this knowledge. And I was curious to know if you noticed any difference between the flavors of the bush strawberries versus mountains or hills. And if that's the case, is there any special meanings that you attach to the flavors?
I haven't had any teachings about different flavors meaning something different. I have noticed though that some of the farm strawberries, the ones that are really big, that sometimes they don't have a real, that they're not really sweet, you know, that they're a little bit, their flavor is not as full and fresh as what the little ones are. These ones are kind of a mix between, I bought some domestic strawberries that were ever-bearing, and I planted them in my garden outside. And there's been wild strawberries in the garden, so they kind of cross-pollinated, I guess. So these are a little bit bigger than wild strawberries, but nowhere near the size of domestic. But they're very sweet and they're very flavorful. You know, it's kind of like almost having jam without all the sugar and stuff. So having a real wild strawberry would be preferable, but of course we can only get those this time of year. So if we want to have strawberries any other time, we have to kind of put up with the other ones. You can, they're good, but some of them, they're so huge, it makes me wonder how they actually get that big. Yeah, so there, but I haven't seen any, haven't had any teachings about meanings for different flavors. No. Does that answer your question okay? Do you have a fruit in your culture that's used like this?
No, not particularly. Maybe I'm not very aware of my culture, which is a horrible thing to say. But like I know in Europe, it had like strawberries were present in paintings in the late Middle Ages and not maybe early Renaissance, 17th century, and they were used as the proxy for the fruit of temptation, but also had other meanings too, like more of a heavenly meaning than a tempting meaning. And I was, because the first story that you mentioned, and sorry I missed the first part of it, that's why I was asking whether it was recorded or not. It kind of resonated as the Abel and Cain story. Yeah, so I was maybe trying to find connections there. And I also work on the flavors of strawberries. So that's why I asked whether there was a meaning attached.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Cain and Abel story. Did they make up with strawberries? I don't.
Well, they didn't make up in the Bible.
Oh, they didn't make up. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the notion of forgiveness and how strawberry looks like a tear, yeah, that deeply resonated with me. Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay.
Thank you,
You're
Aimee.
welcome.
So we have a question from our Q&A window. Can I smudge during my moon time?
Yes. Yes, you can, but just use sage. That's sage is women's medicine, and we can use it at any time of our moon time. There's some, and when I smudge, I only use sage like ever, just to make sure that I don't single anyone out and make them feel uncomfortable because they might be on their moon time. We have enough to deal with when that's happened. But some men will use all of the medicines when they're smudging, and if you get in that situation, you could just step back or pass or something like that without drawing too much attention to yourself. That's why I just use sage all the time, so just to make it much easier for everybody. You're good.
Our next question is, could you please let us know if we as non-Indigenous people are free to respectfully adapt these practices into our lives, spiritual practices, or if they're closed practices, or which are and aren't closed?
There are some things that are closed, such as using a sacred pipe. A sacred pipe that's made from pipestone from Minnesota is one of our main places where that comes from. So some of the Lakota people who guard that quarry, they keep it just for full-blooded Lakota people. So I couldn't even get any from there. So things like that are particularly sacred, that you need to be kind of initiated into. Those sorts of things you should probably stay away from. But smudging is something that is not very different. That there's similarities in many other cultures. I was raised as a Catholic, and I remember different times, different masses through the year, maybe at Christmas time or something. The priest would go through with really strong smelling incense in an incense burner. So that's another. To me, it kind of looked like smudging, but I guess maybe not to him it did. But it's so burning incense is something that we do, that is done in other cultures. So you would go to pray to your ancestors or something like that, and you would light incense, and so that's not a really big difference, I don't see. So you could use sage. Sage is available in many health food stores and other places, maybe gift shops here and there and stuff like that. So it's not a indigenous only plant, you know. So I think that it's pretty safe to use. The pearly everlasting grows everywhere around in this area. It could be harvested. We just think about sustainability if you're going to do that. So you don't take all of it. Take a little bit of what you need. But I think that could be easily done if you're doing it to pray, or you're doing it to feel better. Like some of our kids have been kicked out of school because they smudged, and that's just a misunderstanding of our culture. They were upset. They needed to do something culturally to help them get grounded again. That's what smudging is for. So that's what they do. So it could be done, but you may have things in your own culture that are just as good, and would be more meaningful to you and your ancestors. So, be good.
We do have a question from one of our local residents who's in the Renfrew County area, who's wondering, where do you find wild strawberries? Do you have any secret locations that you might be able to share with the group here?
Well, I think if you just go for a hike, you'll find places. With wild strawberries, you won't find the bounty and the baskets full in the wild that you will find at a berry farm. It's not going to be like that. So you have to be prepared for that. But when you go walking, if you went walking down the street in Pembroke, you would probably find strawberry plants growing on the sides, in the grass on the sides. I think if we did a medicine walk around the campus at Algonquin, we would find them all over the place there too. So as long as it's not in somebody else's garden, I think you're okay.
It's a good question. I was very curious about that answer too.
Yeah, I don't have any secret stashes of it because I have some in my yard now. So yeah.
So this is a really interesting question. Do you have any recipes for making traditional strawberry toothpaste? I was told that strawberries can be used for gum disease and teeth health and teething in babies. So a second part of it, or would people just rub or mush strawberries in their mouth?
Yeah, I think you would just mush them. So you'd get the strawberries and you just push them. I've heard this for whitening your teeth too, to use strawberries. So you just, for gum health and stuff, there's lots of vitamin C in this. And I think the way that I remember scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency, which has something to do with your gums. So if you just squished up some strawberries, so they're a little mush, then you could use it like toothpaste and brush your teeth with it like that, and you'll have really nice fresh breath too.
I love that idea. Great question. Thanks for asking that. So our next question is, why do some men say women shouldn't grow tobacco?
Oh, well, It's probably some kind of power issue, but because traditionally women were always the ones doing the agriculture. So so I think women were tending gardens, and now it could be considered men's medicine maybe, and that's why they think that. But I've never been told that I can't grow tobacco. So you can ignore that one and go ahead and grow it.
Good advice. What is your best advice for a beginner smudger who's female?
I would say if you can find Pearly Everlasting, let me just grab a plant. Pearly Everlasting. This is a dried one, but it's growing right now. It's the stuff, I've transplanted some to my home garden, and it's about a foot and a half high by now, but it doesn't have the flowers on it yet. By the end of July, these white flowers will show on the top, and this is wild sage. So you could try to get some of this, and it's a very mild, sweet smell to it. So it's not too offensive to anybody who's has scent issues. But the easiest way to get into smudging is to use white sage that's available in most health food stores, and at this Turtle Lodge place. They have little smudge kits too. You could get, well, you need something to hold your smudge in. So oftentimes that's a shell, an abalone shell. And those are not from Algonquin territory. Abalone shells all come from the West Coast, south, so California coastline, Mexico, in that area. That's where abalone grow. So that was a trade item that we had. So you need something that will hold your smudge. I was gifted with a little bowl. So this is ceramic. So you can use a ceramic bowl. Even the little things that go under the clay flower pots, the clay part that goes under the clay flower pots, that will work in a pinch too. But something that can stand the heat, and because it gets a little bit warm. I've burnt holes in blankets and stuff like that when I put my shell down on them. So you need that, and some sage, and usually we to start them with matches. So I've had a lot of issues with matches, so I usually have a candle lit beside me, and I have a nice little turtle candle holder that I have. But I have a candle lit, and then I light my mat from that to light the sage. So it's best not. We don't usually use like barbecue lighters or anything like that, although I did have a teaching of a Potawatomi fellow who's keepers of the fire, and they said, well, there's flint in that, and there's spark in that. So so it's really kind of still keeping up the traditions if you use one. But I like to use matches. So that would be mostly what you need. You don't need to have a feather to begin. You can fan it with your hand. You can do it like that. But if you keep your eyes open on a walk or something, you'll come across a feather. In our territory, there's lots of geese around. They shed feathers. They kind of shed a feather every day, kind of thing. So if you see geese are nice feathers. They can be that long or so.
Wild turkeys.
There's other wild turkeys. There's seagulls. There's all kinds of birds with big feathers that can use. And some people have wings that they've just you fan it out and dry it. You can use that wing, of a blue jay or a partridge or anything like that. And then you just crumple up the sage into a little ball, and then you can light it in the bowl and start smudging from there. So the way that I did it at the beginning was to cover all of your senses, your eyes and your ears and your mouth, your throat, and your mind and your heart, and that will just get going. and be careful with your smoke detector because I have set up, well, I've set off the smoke detectors often enough. That's not so bad. If you will never set off a sprinkler system with this. I've checked that out, but you could if there's a fire alarm thing that makes the fire trucks come, you could set those off if you really got it going too much. So you get it going, and you don't let the flame go too much. You just fan it out right away, so it just smolders. So if you let it burn too fast, if you don't crumble it up, it'll burn fast and get too hot and that could set off the smoke alarm. But if you just crumble it up and only let it smoke, then that's the best way to smudge.
So a little bit of I get a kind of complimentary question to that last one is, do you have to wait until the Pearly Everlast has flowered to pick it, or does it matter when you pick it at all?
No, you don't need to wait until it flowers. I've found the same as I was telling Jody before about tobacco. Once a plant goes to flower, it seems like the leaves shrink, because all of the energy of the plant goes into the flowers. So if you can pick it before it flowers, then you'll get a lot more leaves. But just make sure you don't take all of it from that area. Leave some of it. Don't take more than 25% really, so that you can make sure that will still grow there next year, and then you'll know where to get it next year too. Okay.
Do you have to harvest medicines in a respectful way?
Yes, you should. That's a best practice way. So what we've been taught to do is to offer tobacco to that plant for sacrificing itself for what we want to do with it. So anytime that we're harvesting anything, even the strawberries, if we're going to harvest, or before you go out to look for strawberries, if you put down tobacco and say, I'm going to need some help finding a strawberry patch so I can get some. So then put that tobacco down where you at home, and then go on your truck. And when you find the strawberries, then put some tobacco down to thank the strawberries for bearing fruit for you, and don't take them all either. Like there would be some that not all of them will be ripe, right? So leave the ones that are almost ripe there. I'm sharing mine with chipmunks, so they actually really like them. And the same goes for anything that you're harvesting. So yeah, it makes a difference. It's kind of like the way that we would do that even if we're hunting. So the hunters that go deer hunting or moose hunting, they have to put out tobacco before that, so that for the animal to sacrifice itself for what the people need it for. And we would do that if we're going to harvest alders or saplings to make a lodge or anything like that. We need to always offer tobacco. You got for that question.
Is the word shaman okay to use? So the person asks, I've heard it has heavy connotation.
Yeah, it's a Western kind of word that's associated. I've seen it associated more with maybe Russia and Asia and places like that. It's not one that we use in our culture. We would use, I guess the word medicine man has been used in many times, but that's not really what we use either. There's healers, there's doctors, they have, and each different type of healer has different gifts that they can use. So not everybody has the same thing. Nobody has all of them by any, but there's, everybody, including each of you, have particular gifts. And those are gifts given to you by Creator, and that's what you're here to make use of. So that's what we encourage students to do at the college too. So realize your gifts and make use of them.
Well, that looks like the last of our questions at this time. So thank you so much, Aimee, for your insight, your knowledge, and your guidance through that knowledge sharing and Q&A. Now we're going to move into the talking circle portion of today's session. And so each participant is going to be allowed to talk so that you can participate in the talking circle like we would normally do if we had the opportunity to be in the same space. So before we start in that, Aimee, can I ask that you share now, how does a talking circle work?
So a talking circle is one of our, it's like our fundamental way of gathering. In being physically together, it makes a lot more sense. It's harder to do on Zoom, but we're making an attempt to do it anyway, because the circle is very important to us. When you're in a circle, everybody is the same distance from the center. So that means everybody's opinion is equal. So it's just as important as the next person's. So we would try, when we get together physically, we would try to make our circle as round as it could be. Lots of times we're meeting in rectangular rooms and all this stuff, and so people say, well, I'll just move my chair out to the back, and so we force them all to put it back into a circle so that we're all equal like that. And then we use a tool of some kind. Sometimes it would be a feather. Sometimes it would be a stick that we've decorated up to be what we call a talking stick. And so we would pass that stick around from one person to the next. One would start. So in this case, Jody is facilitating this circle. So she would get the stick, and she could say, okay, we're going to start with the next person. So she's going to say who's going to talk next, so that because she can see everybody on her screen. So we're going to pretend we're in a circle. And in our talking circle, it's a time for us to be speaking from the heart. We really like to talk about, you can talk about the topic that we're on, or you can talk about anything that you really need to talk about. You know, you can share what you need to share if that's how you're feeling. So we take turns, and when as each person gets a chance to speak, then the job of everybody else is to listen to them. So that's important. A lot of times, especially in this hectic world, lots of people feel like they're not being heard, you know. So it's our job to listen to them. So and then we'll just go through the whole circle, and everyone will have a chance to speak. It's good if you can. We like to know each other, so introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, if you're the one who came to Canada, or if it was your ancestors who came to Canada, when that happened, where you landed, kind of thing, where you settled, and why you came, and what your plans are, I guess, would be the best way to look at that. Because we, without sharing information like that, we don't get to know each other and feel like we're all on equal footing. So that's how we do a sharing circle. So with that, I'll let Jody start with it.
Thank you, Aimee. So we'll pretend like we're in the same space, which I wish we were, and I'm gonna take the talking feather from you. And I'm just going to also let everybody know that we are going to stop the formal recording now, because what you're sharing is sacred to this circle.